Well, hello. When we last left off, right, we failed to recognize the ground luminosity, right, the absolute nature of who we really are, right? And karmic clouding, I said, would begin to kick in. Now, the secondary clear light represents the beginning of the stirrings of the winds of karma, reformation of everything that has been scattered. First, mind will reform, then a spirit body, then a physical one. Now, the peaceful and wrathful deities represent the reformation of mind, and that's where we left off, about to begin to discuss the Chonyid Bardo. Again, think about the overall process. At the moment of death, karma is suspended, everything's scattered, and you experience the ground luminosity in its pure form, your absolute nature, who you are. If you don't recognize, then there's the secondary clear light. If you don't recognize, then you enter the Chonyid with the peaceful and wrathful deities and begin to experience the universal karma of the human race. Right? If that doesn't work, and you're not woke up yet, you enter the Chonyid Bardo, and you enter a phase of roaming and judgment, right? And you encounter your personal karma, which clouds things even deeper. And then you enter the womb and you're reborn, and boom, you're at it again, right? Now with the Chonyid Bardo, well, I notice here I've said, are there any questions, right? Sadly, you can't ask me any, but you can email me if you want. Watch the lecture, email me questions about the lecture, and I'll answer them, okay? So, with the Chonyid Bardo, karma really kicks in. As if by the pangs of childbirth, you are forcibly confronted with the karmic nature of humanity. Not personal karma, but archetypal karma, which relates to the general structure of human consciousness. So let's read through the beginning guide statement to get it before us. There's a whole lot of interesting symbolism and imagery to pay attention to. O child of noble family, when your body and mind separate, reality will appear, pure and clear, yet hard to discern, luminous and brilliant, with terrifying brightness, shimmering like a mirage on a plain in spring. Do not be afraid of it. Do not be bewildered. This is the natural radiance of your own reality. Therefore recognize it. A great roar of thunder will come from within the light, the natural sound of reality, like 1,000 thunderclaps simultaneously. This is the natural sound of your own mind. So do not be afraid or bewildered. You have what is called a mental body of unconscious tendencies. You have no physical body now of flesh and blood. So whatever sounds, colors, and rays of light occur, they cannot hurt you, and you cannot die. It is enough simply to recognize them as the self-display of your own mind. Know this to be the Bardo state. O child of noble family, if you do not recognize them in this way as your mind's own self-display, whatever meditation practice you have done during life, if you've not met with this teaching, the colored lights will frighten you, the sounds will bewilder you, and the rays of light will terrify you. If you do not understand this essential point of the teaching, you will not recognize the sounds, lights, and rays, and so you will wander in confusion. O child of noble family, after being unconscious for 4.5 days, you will move on. And awakening from your faint, you will wonder what has happened to you. So recognize it as the Bardo state. At that time, samsara is reversed, and everything you see appears as light and images. Notice how it gives time intervals. After being unconscious for 4.5 days, the whole Bardo state is said to occur across about a 30-day period, though it depends again on the person. So it's like they're giving a sort of rough estimate. But in the actual practice, right, the text is read to the dead person, right? At first while they're laying there, after they first died, and then after they're cremated, you go and sit where that person was, and you continue for the days, reading it for the days, right? I have a real memory of this with one of my students. His name was Joel, and he was in my class, this class, about 22, 23 years ago maybe. And during the middle of, he'd taken this class with me, and during the middle of the next semester, he developed an aggressive form of cancer, and within 6 weeks, he was dead, right? And Joel and I talked a lot before he died, And he asked me to read the Bardo Tadal for him after he died. And since we used to meet in my office a lot during office hours, so it was during the summer, every day for 30 days, I went over and read the text for Joel, right? And that would be how the text could be used, right? Initially, you're talking to the corpse, as it were, right? And then after the corpse is buried or cremated, the idea is their consciousness is still there, and you can continue to help them, right? Which is a kind of nice thought. Right? So, for 14 days, the dead person in the Chonyid, right? There's like 7 days with the peaceful deities, and if they don't wake you up, then the wrathful ones come in to try to wake you up, right? So for 14 days, the dead person will confront the structures of human consciousness as they reform, symbolized as the peaceful and wrathful deities and their accompaniments. Each one is an opportunity to recognize. Each one is a fuller experience of karma. In each case, the point is to know yourself in the Bardo. Each Buddha deity is a reality principle. It appears in an elaborate mandala with the primary clear light shining out from behind it. It is as if they are light condensed. And each figure is so astonishing and overwhelming, such a great, booming, overwhelming, bright manifestation appearing to your awareness that most of us will try to flee, let alone recognizing in that figure the true energy of part of our very own mind. Again, though, wherever you go, it's going to be there with you, because wherever you go, it is you, right? So let's read through the first day when you meet with Vairochana, right? The deity you meet on the first day, the first member of the Buddha family you meet. Let's see what page I'm on. Yes, there it goes. The whole of space will shine with a blue light, and blessed Vairochana will appear before you from the central realm. His body is white in color. He sits on a lion throne, holding an 8-spoked wheel in his hand. All of these symbols mean something, right? The 8-spoked wheel is the wheel of the Noble Eightfold Path, for example. So these are symbolizations of teaching truths that represent aspects of your own mind. So, his body is white in color. He sits on a lion throne, holding an 8-spoked wheel and embracing his companion, the queen of Vajra space. The blue light of the skanda of consciousness in its basic purity, the wisdom of reality, luminous, clear, sharp, and brilliant, will come toward you from the heart of Vairochana and his consort, and pierce you so that your eyes cannot bear it. At the same time, together with it, the soft white light of the gods will also come toward you and pierce you. At that time, under the influence of bad karma, you will be terrified and escape from the wisdom of reality with this bright blue light, but you will feel an emotion of pleasure toward the soft white light of the gods. At that moment, do not be frightened or bewildered by the luminous, brilliant, very sharp, and clear blue light of supreme wisdom, for it is the light ray of the Buddha, which is called the wisdom of the Dharmadhatu. Be drawn to it with faith and devotion, and supplicate it, thinking, it is the light ray of blessed Vairochana's compassion. I take refuge in it. It is blessed Vairochana coming to invite you in the dangerous pathway of the Bardo. It is the light ray of Vairochana's compassion. Do not take pleasure in the soft white light of the gods. Do not be attracted to it or yearn for it. If you are attracted to it, you will wander into the realm of the gods and circle among the 6 kinds of driven existence. It is an obstacle blocking the path of liberation. So do not look at the soft white light, but feel longing for the bright blue light, and repeat this meditation after me. When through intense ignorance I wander in confusion on the luminous light path of the Dharmadhatu wisdom, may blessed Vairochana go before me, his consort, the queen of Vajra space, behind me, help me to cross the Bardo's dangerous pathway and bring me to the perfect Buddha nature. By saying this meditation with deep devotion, he will dissolve into rainbow light in the heart of blessed Vairochana and his consort. Right? And then it says, but After having been shown, set face to face with Vairocana, he is afraid of the lights and rays because of his aggression and neurotic veils, and he escapes. And if he's still confused, then on the second day will come Vajrasattva, and so on. Just repeated attempts to wake the person up. But think about this, right? Think how astonishing, how wonderful and terrifying the action of human beings are in our everyday world. Because what they're describing is us encountering human nature itself, what it means to be human. Think of the acts of great beauty and great horror that occur all around us and stagger us. There can be a great work of beauty and art, a great work of technical achievement, a great life of compassion. There can also be great works of ugliness and dysfunction and great lives of hatred. Think of a heart surgeon repairing an infant's heart the size of a walnut, or an F-15 fighter jet screaming in to smart bomb a target. Think of Jonas Salk discovering the polio vaccine. Or think of the scientists in the Manhattan Project working on the atomic bomb. One saving millions from death and dysfunction through medicine, the others killing millions and maiming thousands in the blink of an eye. Oh, think about the human mind. Do you know who you are? What you can do? What force for good or ill is in you? Acts of beauty and wonder, horror and terror, so fantastic they seem godlike and inhuman, like there's some bright booming God flaring and shining outside of us, or like some awesome, terrifying, blood-drinking terror. But all these things are just properties of the human mind. We, the human race, we cause the wonders, we cause the terrors, and no one is responsible for it but us, right? Well, think of all the potential and energy of human consciousness released with no restraint whatsoever, all at once. That's what they're describing. Don't we wonder in the Bardo now, not recognizing this? Do you read the paper, study history, look at your own life and the life of those around you? Don't we see what we do to ourselves now, not recognizing the projections of our own mind? Every wonder and horror of history is our own thought forms, expressing the reality of the human mind's collective power, its astonishing potential. Every war, every act of terror, every act of compassion, it's all the human mind. So tantric philosophy and the practice of the craft of dying tries to involve those who practice it while living in the experiential realization of the powers of human consciousness. And what is described is a way of living and experiencing being human now, wherever our now finds us. Remember, you might as well call the Tibetan Book of the Dead a Tibetan Book of Life. It's not just about when you die, it's about right now, wherever your now finds you. And one day your now will find you dying, so best get ready. It represents a way to experience a nexus infused with meaning, of which I am inseparably a part. Now, this book by Francesca Fremantle, she's the one who helped translate the Bardo Tadal with Chogyam Trungpa, can sort of be a companion for you if you really want to get into what we're doing, and I'm not there to spur you on or answer your questions. Really study this book. She has a lot of good things to say. But just in regard to this, I want to give you one example. There's a lot of stuff we'd have been reading aloud in class. You know how we do that, but we can't do that now, so you've just got to read it all on your own. But, oh, no, I want 256. Here we go. So, these phenomena are terrifying because they're so raw and intense. They're not like ordinary sound, light, and color. They're a pure energy, expressing the subtle qualities of the 5 basic elements that make up our consciousness. The consciousness in the Bardo is no longer protected by the solidity of flesh and bone or limited by the dullness of the physical senses. It is as though one is plunged totally naked into a whirlpool of sensations, right? Trungpa Rinpoche often spoke of the way we perceive the world as projection, and whatever appears during the Bardo is one's own projection. This is meant to convey the idea that all visions come from one's own mind and are the manifestations of one's own nature. However, during the years since the translation was published, I found that projection can sometimes give the wrong impression, especially in connection with the deities. It seems to imply something false and might suggest that the deities themselves are nothing but the projections of our dualistic consciousness. I now prefer to use the term self-display, right? It's the self-display of our own mind. It is a very appropriate sense of ambiguity that helps to sabotage our usual dualistic habits of thought. It suggests at the same time both the appearance of the deities from one's own mind and their own spontaneous, self-existent appearance, right? Yeah. So, read the book. And the images and ideas do not express a theory about facts somehow existing out there, but instead express the reality of our integrated experience of the world, its existential meaning, right? Remember when I talked about Taoism, I explained the idea of an experiential metaphysics, a metaphysics of meaning, that in these ways of thinking, there is no real distinction between what we call objective facts versus subjective meaning. The idea that there's a world of things out there that I experience in here, a view which the West has apotheosized as the truth of the so-called world of objective facts, with our own subjective feelings and so on, not being part of that real world of facts. Or in terms of this text, reading it as if the deities were objective facts, whatever those are, which we could then use to give a theory of mind. Now, I myself have never experienced an objective fact, which is not to say that there's not real truth, because though I have never experienced an objective fact, I have experienced structures of truth binding on all beings that no one can escape from. It's just that truth arises in structures of interdependencies and not in one-to-one causal relations. In Luminous Emptiness, on page 92, Francesca Fremantle writes this: in Buddhism, the external world is never considered separate from the observer. We can only know the world as we experience it. The physical universe is certainly not ignored, but it's always treated as indivisibly linked with the inner world of consciousness. So in the Buddhist analysis, it is represented by only 5 factors, the field of the 5 senses. All material phenomena are defined by the fact that they can be seen, heard, smelled, tasted, or touched. If they were not perceptible by the senses, we would know nothing about them. And whatever we do know comes to us by means of our senses. All the other things are concerned with the processes of perception and consciousness and with psychological states. These states of mind condition the way in which we experience the world, so that mind and body, inner and outer, can never be separated. This system describes existence not in a theoretical way, but as it is actually lived by sentient beings from moment to moment. Remember, I had said in the very first lecture that it seemed to me Buddha Dharma was a kind of phenomenology. The philosophy, I said, that in the modern West, that I practice, for example, in which you try to pay careful attention to how things appear to human beings just as human beings, apart from any theoretical conceptions. You just try to accurately describe how human beings are experiencing things and try to get at the meaning of it in that way. And that's what's going on here. So when writers in texts like these refer to the world or reality in phrase like the experiencing of reality, they do not mean there is some separate external physical fact that is causing me to experience this effect in here. Though that's not true even now, by the way, in my experience of this podium. Right? That I'm, without my senses, without the way my brain is interacting, without all kinds of countless factors, there's not this. Right? This is not an objective fact, it's a truth. Right? And if someone would say, well, the objective fact is it's really atoms moving very fast, so fast, and but I can't see them. Well, that may be a fact, but it's not the truth, if you see what I mean, because the truth concerns how we live and experience the world to find meaning. Right? So the teachings are pointing to how meaning arises in human experience, the reality of being human, which is the only reality we have. It just turns out that being human is something far grander than we ever dreamed of. For we are not subjects standing in a world of objects which we experience in here as opposed to out there, sort of lonely minds estranged from all these objects around us. Instead, we are a process event, inextricably intertwined with reality. And if in our talk of reality, we do not speak truly when we speak about things as if they were outside us, or we are without them. Instead, truth reflects a nexus infused with meaning, of which I can become the universal voice, mirroring reality in the forms of human mind. The sparkling clarity of the void, which is neither subject and object, because it's a truth beyond fact. So presented in the text are ways of yogic practice and meditation so that one experiences metaphysical realities and does not merely have some theory about them. It represents what I call a metaphysics of actual experience, which you must do in order to know. Do, they say, and you will know. And the knowledge that arises from the doing is the only knowledge ultimately worth having. In Vajrayana philosophy, the idea that you must do in order to know is taken very seriously. A very real attempt to move from a speculative standpoint to a direct awareness. And speculation is not denied, but instead becomes itself a yogic technique. So you have what is known as the yoga of knowledge, the yoga of scholarship, in which you too integrate it with everything else and practice mindfulness, awareness in doing that, right? But the idea is that speculation or theory by itself, apart from mindfulness, is worthless, as is anything else, if it's done in a mindless manner. So tantric texts engage us on many Tantric texts engage us on many levels then, engaging our creative imagination to infuse our intellectual realizations with life, engaging primordial images of human reality that are the formative principles of who we are as human beings. Right? Each deity incarnates a basic human emotion, for example, which can bind us or set us free. It will bind us if we are not aware of it, seeing it as something that happens to us, that we are not responsible for. Right? Notice how when you get in any situation, you'll externalize. Right? Like just some simple example, you're in traffic and someone cuts you off and you get angry at them, and it's their fault. It's their fault. This whole situation, in fact, where you can't get to where you're going, it's not my fault, it's all their fault, and you're angry. Right? It's happening to you. You're not responsible for it. The deities stand for the impersonal strands of necessity that make up any human being, rather. Right? It's you that you have to confront. Right? So think about when you've been really angry. Then you've encountered a deity, right? I mean really angry, right? Not miffed, right? I mean angry. Depending on whatever makes you angry. Like people hurting people for no reason makes me angry, okay? Right? Well, you've encountered the deity then, and if you didn't recognize it and integrate it into yourself, then you could have put yourself in a kind of hell state, right? But you can take that anger, we'll learn, and flip it, and the flip side of anger turns out to be mirror-like wisdom, where you step back and just see things for what they are, right? So it's like every negative emotion can be transformed into something positive. Or they call these negative emotions poisons, which can be transmuted, like in alchemy, transmute the poison into an elixir that's healthy. So the various Buddhas represent a path to this integration and recognition. Each Buddha figure represents an aspect of the enlightened mind in visual form. It's as if the primary clear light were separated into a spectrum through a prism, and each Buddha symbolizes some aspect of ultimate reality which we must recognize. So each day, we're going through 14 days with the deities, each deity represents a certain set of karmic problems that you must solve in meeting them to advance in your recognition of reality. For example, in Vairochana, we meet with fear itself, which through recognition becomes the wisdom of spaciousness, and I'll talk some more about that later. In this way, the student is beginning to see how in all cases, the highest things are present in the lowest. that sacred, profane, sensual, spiritual, worldly, transcendental, ignorance, enlightenment, samsara, nirvana are aspects of the same integrated reality. And in this way, these philosophers teach, one begins to see what Pema Chodron, my favorite Tibetan Buddhist nun teacher, calls the wisdom of no escape. Isn't that a great phrase? The wisdom of no escape. Right? That we cannot flee any aspect of our consciousness and life experience, but must face it all. That through recognition, we see that all the opposites, confusion and enlightenment, chaos and order, pain and pleasure, sensual and spiritual, are inseparable. So, and here is another handout for you. I've posted it online and would have had you read it aloud, but I'll read it for you, because that's what I'm doing these days, right? So listen. Frequently, spiritual awakening is described as a journey to the top of a mountain. We leave our attachments and our worldliness behind and slowly make our way to the top. And at the peak, we have transcended all pain. The only problem with this metaphor is that we leave all the others behind. Our drunken brother, our schizophrenic sister, our tormented animals and friends. Their suffering still continues, unrelieved by our personal escape. In the process of discovering enlightened mind, the journey goes down and not up. It's as if the mountain pointed toward the center of the earth instead of reaching into the sky. Instead of transcending the suffering of all creatures, we move toward the turbulence and the doubt. We jump into it. We slide into it. We tiptoe into it. We move into it however we can. We explore the reality and unpredictability of insecurity and pain, and try not to push it away. If it takes years, if it takes lifetimes, we let it be as it is. At our own pace, without speed or aggression, we move down and down and down. With us move millions of others, our companions, in awakening from fear. At the bottom, we discover water, the healing water of enlightened mind. Right down there in the thick of things, we discover the love that will not die. Now, the deities then represent the thick of things, the very ground or bottom of how things are and the universal experience of human consciousness. The deities represent the wisdom of no escape, and each represents a way to face egocentric illusion, right? That really offers a way into the broader world which embraces the truth of voidness, which means, remember, essential interdependence with all things. This attitude then takes on the mind of the bodhisattva, the enlightened state of mind. Just look at what you're told to think about when you're dying, and you'll see this again and again throughout the text. Again and again and again. Right? O child of noble family, that which is called death has now arrived, so you should adopt this attitude. I have arrived at the time of death. So now, by means of this death, I will adopt only the attitude of the enlightened state of mind, friendliness and compassion, and attain perfect enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, limitless as space. With this attitude, at this special time, for the sake of all sentient beings, I will recognize the luminosity of death as the body of truth. I will act for the good of all beings. If I do not attain this, I will recognize the Bardo state as it is, and attaining the ultimate realization, I will act for the good of all beings, as limitless as space, in whatever way will influence them. Without letting go of this attitude, you should remember and practice whatever meditation you have received in the past. The core message there is to act for others, to help them. When you're dying, to think, by this death, I will try to do good for everyone. Right? What a thought. It represents the vow of the bodhisattva we talked about before. The bodhisattva, what I think of as the bodhisattvic intent, which just illumines this book. Right? It's almost like a manual for the bodhisattva. But if recognition is not achieved, then the illusions of ego tighten their grip as the winds of karma begin to blow ever harder. For wherever we try to flee, reality will be there. And if we refuse to recognize it, we will create for ourselves a world of unreality that leads to further suffering. But, these philosophers say, if we take the bodhisattva's way, The way down is the way up. Thank you for your kind attention.